Hi, this is Kylie Coo. Welcome. Again this week I'm bringing you a project that I've created digitally, but it can be done in a traditional way as well. And thanks for all your comments on last week's video. Just a few things I want to note. So I wanted to point out that the app that I'm using is Procreate. Now it is a paid for app, but I think it's very worth it. It's not all that expensive. I create on A4 size because I want to be able to print off my creations, but that means when I size it for YouTube there are black bars down the edges to fit the screen. But I'm going to do all these projects, once I'm better, in a traditional way. So my process for my Painty papers today are as follows. Layer 1, I will use something like a black marker pen or paint. Layer 2, I'm going to use paint effects with brushes, and then I'm going to smudge some of the paints together. Layer 3, I'm going to add more colour. Layer 4, I'm going to add marks and pattern and colour. And layer 5, I am going to do mark making, including drips and splatters, mainly with black and white, but not in each case that I'm going to show you. So for the first Painty paper I created, I was trying to write out the steps as I went along. So you'll see there, I put the plain background as white, and layer 1, I'm going to use a black marker type pen or paintbrush. Obviously it's a digital paintbrush or pen in this case. You'll see sometimes I'll put something on the screen and then it disappears. But all I'm doing is getting those marks down to begin with. So each piece I create basically follows the same pattern, and I am going to leave a link to a video at the end and down below which more or less follows this sort of process. You can see how I created some background papers, or really like a kind of painted masterboard. So layer 2 is the paint effects with really just different colours. Procreate generates the video output from the work done at a very fast rate, so I've had to slow it down here. It is still pretty fast, but when you see me writing something, that means it slows it down a lot. So now I'm just going to use a bit of a blending technique just to kind of smoosh those colours together. So this would be kind of like taking a brush over different colours on your paper and just smooshing them together just to get them to merge together a bit. Layer 3, I'm now going to add some more colour, so you can see that the black on the bottom is still showing through. I don't mind if a lot of that's covered up, but some of it will still actually show through at the ends. So there I'm adding more colour. And for the next layer I'm going to add what I'm calling marks or patterns in actual colours. So again, coming in with more paint. If I was doing this on paper, I'd be bringing in more paint, but rather than just kind of spreading paint out across the entirety of the page, I will recreate some shapes that's in the bottom layer, but I'll also add some new shapes. So you'll see kind of squares, circles and lines, etc. And I tried with this first one to do something very bright. Last week I was doing the kind of grungy collage. This week I'm doing something brighter on this one. And layer 5 is mark making with drips and splatters, and in this particular paper I'm just going to use black and white. And as I say, my intention is that once my hand is better, I'm going to print these off, and I'm actually going to use these as background pages or indeed as collage. So just using kind of different Procreate pens here just to create the little lines, the little dots, and it is good because it does also have a kind of splatter effect brush, and you'll see that in just a moment. I think these papers give a lot of interest as a kind of starting point, and as I always say, this is what I would call a rainy day project. So if there's a day where you just don't know what to do, you want to create but you're not sure what, then something like Painty papers or little collage papers is a great thing to do, because you really don't have to give it an awful lot of thought, and it's fun, and you can produce something relatively quickly. So as I said, thanks for all the comments on the last video when I was doing the collage papers. There I'm adding the kind of splatters now. And thanks too to those of you that are watching some of my older videos. You know, that's really making a big difference, and it just keeps my channel kind of in sight of YouTube. So now I'm starting a second paper, and again I'm just using a kind of marker on the background. Here I'm going in with the first layer of paint, doing a bit of smooshing just to meld them together a bit, and then in a moment I will start to come in with some more patterns. Now with this I'm using a palette that's established in Procreate where the colours kind of go together. I think this one was called Campfire, and it felt like colours that I maybe don't use a lot. I started to do a kind of effect there with circles, and it had that kind of bokeh effect, I thought. I actually, before I started doing the white mark making there, I took a kind of screenshot of it as it was because I wanted to come in with a different colour. So this one I'm keeping fairly muted, and I just add black and white to that background page. But you'll see when it comes to the next one where I started with that background up to the point where I'd made the coloured kind of circles, I then come in with some, you know, something quite different. And that's the sort of thing you can do with traditional Painty papers as well. If you get to a certain point where you think, I like that, but I could go in two different directions, then you could just photocopy it or take an image of it that could be printed later at the printers. So again here, I've gone round most of the kind of circles I'd created with the equivalent of a kind of white Posca pen, and now I've got the equivalent of a kind of black Posca pen, and just doing little marks here and there just to add interest. And yeah, that one in the bottom right hand, I don't know, I increased the screen size a bit, so kind of lost a bit of the effect, so I had to add the rest of it in. And again, just coming in with the splatters. So yeah, I wanted to add this hot pink to it, so just doing kind of circles. And the thing about Procreate is you can draw a really squiggly circle, but if you hold it in place it will even the circle up, for want of a better word. Lots of splatters there and introduced black, and I really loved that one. This next one I wanted to do something grungier, so I've started with a slightly creamier kind of background, and I've started it differently because I thought this is like a drop paper on my work table. So starting this time with splatters, some of those darker splatters, now coming in with a brush in the way that I might on a piece of drop paper with any paint that I had left over. So just kind of smooshing that about, using a bit of a different colour here, and this really starts to create a nice textured effect. And again with this one, I stopped at a certain point but then went on and created another paper from it. So I've got it where it stops, and then I've got it where I've taken it on further. Hope that makes sense. Quick update on my broken wrist. I was back for a consultation at hospital, more x-rays, and I'm going to have the cast on for the longer period rather than the shorter. They thought 4 to 6 weeks, but it's definitely going to be 6 weeks, and then I will need to have some kind of physiotherapy after that. So I basically stopped the paper at this point, but then I took that background so far and started another paper. I didn't add a lot to this, but I wanted to start to add some colours, almost like a kind of rusted or the kind of verdigris effect, you know, with the kind of green. And I really just kept building this up. I think I used kind of 2 shades of green just to try and... It's so subtle, it's quite difficult to see the changes here. Started to come in with some more around edges, put a kind of stamp on it, a bit like the embroidery plastic I use sometimes for creating papers, and then again just coming in with some kind of black and a slightly off-white splatters. So I had a lot of fun creating these. I can't wait to get them printed out and to be able to actually use them in an art journal or whatever. So I will bring you another digital project next week, but one again that can be done in a kind of traditional way. So as always, thanks for watching. I appreciate it so much. Bye for now.